All right, good morning grade 10. Welcome back to a painting tutorial. This is going to be for acrylic paints. We finished last week our paint sampler. Mine kind of looks like this. So tried different techniques, did different things. It's just the paint sampler that we used. And then today we're going to start a painting tutorial, and we're going to be painting all together, and we're going to be painting this scene over here. So if you have not yet printed it out, or if you do not have it on your computer beside you, that would be valuable to do that. So I have a color copy here. You can put this on your computer if you'd like. I also printed out a black and white because it helps me see the darks and lights a little bit better. I'm going to show you what I started with. I have mine on a canvas or on a poster board, so I can paint, and on an easel so I can paint while I'm chatting with you. Just going to bring this up for a minute and hopefully you can see that. There we go. For you, you'll probably just have it on your laps or whatever works for you. It doesn't really matter, whatever's most comfortable for you. If you want to put a book underneath it, or even you can see I've taped mine here to a board, you can do that as well. So to start out, the first thing that you have to do is you want to make sure that you have your basic layout on your paper. So I used a pencil. I did it fairly dark because if I don't, then you can't see it. So I did it fairly dark. For you, it could be a bit lighter if you would like, especially with the yellow values, because sometimes when you paint those light values, it doesn't really cover it up. So here we've got the side-by-side comparison. You can see what I did where I started with the horizon line. It looks like it falls almost in the center, so I drew it straight across. And then I started to figure out where did the masts go. So I drew those in for the boat. And then I realized that the church over here is pretty well in the center. So I kind of drew that in the center, and then I aligned everything else around it. So looking again over here at this color picture, you'll see there's buildings and so forth in the background. And then from there, we've got the water in the foreground with a bunch of different boats as they recede into the distance. This is a very colorful picture. It's powerful from that perspective. Not sure if you want to do it the exact same way. You don't have to, but you do have to use the same type of techniques. Okay, and everybody's is going to turn out differently. The other thing that I drew some shapes in for was where the different lights and darks are going to go. I'm going to start with the sky. I'm going to start very, very light. So I drew in those light shapes. You can see there's one over here. There's another one that comes up a little bit like this. And then even around the boat, do you see this shape over here? That's all where all the light's going to go. It gives me a little bit of a map of what I'm going to paint and what color is going to go where. So get yourself a plate. Just use a dinner plate, kind of trying to hold it up a little bit, and put the colors of paint on that plate. I put, of course, the red, yellow, and blue, a tiny little dollop of black, and a few different yellows or a few different whites because I want to mix the white in to the yellow. I want to have a bunch of different things, different depths and different darknesses of the yellow. So I thought if I start with 3 little dabs of white, then that would give me some flexibility. Make sure you don't put too much paint on your palette. You can always add more, but it's very hard to take it away. You only have a limited amount, so not too much. All right, so that's that part of this. The paintbrushes that we're going to start with are either one of these two, whichever is the largest flat brush that you have. Flat brush, you can see here, it's just flat, straight across the top. Whichever one is the largest one that you have, that's the one that you want to be using. Either one of these would work, and I'll probably go back and forth to kind of show you that. So either one would work. You also want to have some water. I just put it in a little kid's cup, as well as some paper towel for dabbing your brush. All right, so I noticed that the lightest areas that I'm going to be painting are in the sky here, that white and light yellow, as well as almost like a little bit of a cross going across like that. And that makes sense because this is the brightest part of the sun and it's going to reflect in the water that way. So I'm going to start with that. I've just taped up my picture on the top of the easel there. You'll have it on your computer side by side. I've also made some paint. So I'll show that to you here. So So I've made some of that yellowy white paint. I don't mind if it's not completely mixed in well together, because the whole picture shows a lot of different values. So I don't mind if it's not exactly the way it is. So the first step is to dip your paint brush into the water, and then just on the sides, just kind of take some of the water out. So dip, 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 and then just gonna kind of go like that and gets rid of some of the water. I already have some paint on here because I use this for painting, or for mixing, sorry. Then dab on the paper towel to get rid of some of that, and then we're going to start. So I'm just gonna go right over top of what I already have created. The pencil drawing, I know that most of those values that are in there are going to end up being darker anyways, so it doesn't matter to me if I go over top of it. So I'm looking carefully now, and I'm going to be painting wherever I see a little bit of that yellowy tone. This is yellow mixed with white. It's quite light. I can go lighter, and I will go lighter as soon as it dries. But I'm just starting with this, going around the buildings here, going right off the page. On this side, just going above the clouds a little bit. Right, and this long horizontal strokes again, because whenever we paint anything that is in a landscape, we often want to do long horizontal strokes. I'm also going to put this light yellow color just in the water here, kind of ignoring for the moment where the buildings are going, because they're going to be darker, so I can put them right over top. And then in front of the boat too, I want to do this piece here. It's going to be covered with orange a little bit, but it kind of has the idea of being kind of this yellowish color all the way down. So a little bit like that, and then maybe taper it a wee bit at the edges here. There we go. So that's our first step. Okay, so the next step is going to be adding into this a little bit of a darker yellow. I think I'm going to go with a bit of a darker yellow. I'm going to stick that underneath here on top. Again, long horizontal strokes, just slightly touching the page here and there, and up towards the outsides of this yellowy piece. We're going to have some of this darker yellow. So, oh, sorry, you can see here I made two darker colors. One's almost like a peachy and one's a darker yellow. So I'm going to continue with that, put that in there. The painting that we're working from has a lot of brush stroke that's very visible. You can do that if you would like. If you don't like it like that, you can also take that brush stroke out and you can make it a little bit less visible. The choice is yours. Make it a little bit more blended. It's whatever you like. Okay, so I'm going to add some more to this over here, just in the edges here. And I will go back with the white when it's dry to get that white piece that's kind of in between. The sun is over here, and there'll be some white that comes down here. Just want to create a bit of a base layer first to help me with this. A little bit more water. You can see it's getting kind of dry, so it's always good to dip into the water. And just kind of, maybe that was too much water. That's okay, these things happen. And now I'm going to take a slightly darker color, and I'm going to go back in again, and I'm going to add a bit more of this on the edges. I like it to come in a wee bit here and there. And I also wanted to bring out this darker, kind of slightly orangey color to a few other areas of the sky. So again, these long horizontal strokes. Maybe I'll put a little bit more in this area as well. Here also, you can use your own judgment a little bit as you want to. If you want it to be very chunky, very brush oriented where you see all the brush strokes, or if you want it to be a bit lighter, it's totally up to you. You might have to wait for a little bit until things dry. Sometimes blending like this means that you're just picking up the other colors and blending directly in, and it might be too much. If that is the case, then just grab a blow dryer. I'm sure you have one of those in your house, and just use a blow dryer to blend it out. And now I'm going back into my pure yellow, and I'm just going to pull in a little bit of this pure yellow in places over here. You know, that's the most reflective part of the sun, is the light, and then it gets a little bit darker, and it goes kind of peachy from there. So I like to have a little bit of that in here. I'm going to add a bit more of that to this area, and a wee bit of that up at the top here as well. There we go. And I'm just going to echo a wee bit of that in the water. Now, of course, the sun is going to be brighter than the reflection in the water, right? So we don't need too much of it. Just put a few little pieces in here just to show that going down. So this is actually what I'm doing right now, is actually the reflection of the light that comes from the houses. So if you look down here, you see that there's streaks that look like they're completely vertical. Those are supposed to be the reflection of those lights in the houses. I'm not sure if I'm going to do as much as what they have here. So I think what I'm going to do then is just do a few of them and kind of see how that turns out. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about color theory for a few minutes here. This was the yellow mixed with some white. And then from there, I made a very light one. And then I added just a touch of red to it to take it back. Here's my pure red. I want to have a pink as well. I feel like there's a few areas that are kind of pink. I'm going to put that pink in there. But that pink to me is very, it's a little bit too, bubblegum pink. So I almost never use black to make my colors darker. I always use the next darkest color. So in this case, I want it to become a little bit less pink, more bluish, more purpley. So I'm just going to take a tiny little bit, and you can see there's only like this much on my brush, and I'm going to mix that in, and it's going to turn it to a more purpley type of pinky type of color, I guess. A little bit more almost like a lilac. Oh, sorry, you can see that. So there's the original color and there's the new color. If I find that that's too purpley, I might go back a wee bit and grab a little bit more red and make it a bit redder again. And you can play with colors this way and have a lot of fun with it to figure out what's best for you. Also not a great idea what I'm doing mixing with my paintbrush. You can see all the paint is getting stuck in the ferrule. It's actually a terrible idea. What would be a better idea is if you have a small fork or something like that. It doesn't get stuck in the fork and you're not wasting as much paint. So whatever you like, whatever works best for you, you can figure that out yourself. But using a paintbrush is not my shining moment of demonstration here. You're going to be best to use either a popsicle stick or a fork or something like that. Okay, so again, I'm going to show you the picture. You can see that there's oranges and then there's purples. There's some pinks up in this area over here. And I could even hold since I have a color printer, I could even hold my plate up and say, I kind of like those colors. They kind of fit well with what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to go in now and I'm just going to paint streaks of these different colors in different areas. So I'm going to start with the next lightest, which is this one over here. And I'm just going to paint some streaks in there. I kind of like it in the one area, so we can see we have it a little bit in that one area. Paint right off the page, by the way, when you're painting. Put a little streak in there. Might be worth it for me to get a smaller brush here so I can really do smaller streaks because I'm finding they're a little bit bulky and I don't have much control over them. So, and then on this side too, I'm going to go put in some different streaks here in and about, kind of going on top of where I was before. A little bit like that, and I'll kind of blend those in a little while. I'm also thinking my sun's coming from here, so the outside of this is also going to be a little bit streaky. So I'm going to put in some of these colors over here, and I like it when they go a little bit throughout. Some more, some less, a little bit more maybe. And I think I'm going to switch brushes for a moment and find a finer brush. If you feel like you're being successful with the brush you're using, that's fine. Here's the next size down that I have here. So I'm going to use this one. This is actually the brush that is called a filbert brush, and has a bit of a rounded edge to it, but it would work quite well. So next darkest color is over here, and I'm just going to go back in. And now I'm going to be a little bit, I think I'm going to use the roundness of this brush and just create a bit more shape here, blending it a little bit more shape as to adding in, covering up some of those white spots and adding in some of these dark spots. And it's fun because it's almost like a bit of an orangey pink. I'm also leaving a fair amount of texture on my page, not using a lot of water at this time. There's a lot of paint on my brush. That's okay. You can again do what you like, play around with it, see what suits you best. Okay, so that's where I'm at with the sky right now. You can see I have a lot of the darker values in there going towards the center in here. I'm just starting out with this purpley color at the moment, and I'm just going to try to fill in some of what's happening down here on the picture. You can see we've got some bigger streaks in here, then some blue, and then some purple. I'm quite high. I want to do a little bit of the purple just to show you what it looks like. I'm going to echo it from at the bottom over here and then up a little bit higher. So we're going to start that. We've got almost a straight line going across like this, kind of echoing that purpley line. Again, you can do whatever you want. It doesn't have to be like this at all. I just want it to be a streaky sky, and I would like you to play with your colors a little bit to see what it feels like to get those different colors. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of this darker purple around it. I'm not sure if I love that, so I'll go back out, grab a little bit more and blend it back in. And that's kind of what you do. You go back and forth, blend it. A little bit of water on my brush. Now I'm going to go on the very darkest side again. Put a bit more in there. So now I've got a bit of this purpley color, kind of like that. I'm going to put a little bit of a streak in here that echoes it. Right, using my brush, wiggling and moving my brush around to create these cloud-like structures. And I'm probably going to put one over here as well to bring the eye back out. Even though this is probably not authentic to what's happening in the actual original, I just think that would look really cool. So I'm going to do that, and you can do that as well. You can use your own imaginations, what you think looks well. Think about the viewer and where they're looking. I also notice down here I have a little bit more, so I'm going to put a bit more of these colors over top. This side has a different base. It is a bit more of a pink base, so it's going to look slightly different when you do it on a side that has a different base. Trim that out a little bit. Yeah, I think I kind of like that. Comes up and around like that. There. So that gives us a wee bit more of that purpley thing. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the blue. So I'll make some blues and I'll show you before and after I do the blue sky. All right, so you can see the sky, the water is echoing the same colors that we have in the sky we have in the water right now. I also noticed that my water that I'm painting with is super dirty, so I'm going to get a new, clean, fresh glass of water to dip the paint in. And this is, at this point, what my paper towel looks like, all the dabs on there. So I'm constantly dabbing paint out, making sure I have enough wetness, but not too much wetness on my paintbrushes. Okay, so I built some different types of blues. Let me show you. I have the blue that I started with. Here is blue and quite a bit of red. Here is this blue-red color, so it makes a very dark purple with more blue and less red. And then here is a little bit of the original blue with some white. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the boats. So I'll show you again what the boats look like. So if you come down, you can see their boats are here. Notice a few things. As they move away from us, they become less formed, so we don't quite see the sharp edge that we see over here as they move away, and they also become a lot lighter. So the darkest boat's going to be over here. So I started that already just to test out. I'm using a flat brush. You can see it, a flat brush, a little bit of dark blue on the end of my brush, taking it straight across and kind of saying, okay, that's where it's going to end, and then a little bit of dark blue in these areas. The second boat is coming right past here, and then I'm going to do the same with the second boat. I'm going to take it down like that and bring it down to about there and say that's the end. And then grab a bit more paint and a little bit of water so it glides a little bit easier across the page. The third boat, I'm going to start about here, and same deal, I'm going to take it all the way back to about there. A fourth boat there, and the fifth boat like that. Oh, my paper keeps falling down. That's okay. Now you can probably see it a little bit as well. Oh, we'll just leave it there so you can actually see it. So that's what the boats are going to be like. So now I'm going to take a bit of the lighter color that I have, cleaning out my brush, wiping it on the edges, wiping it on the paper towel. Take a little bit of that lighter blue, and I'm going to create, so I'm just going to quickly, a little bit of that lighter blue, add a little bit of the true blue to it because I want a bit of a medium color. And I'm going to use this for the inside of the boat. And I'm just going to kind of then bring it across again in this horizontal motion and add a little bit more to this boat. A little bit more to this one, a little bit more to that one, and that one, and this one at the very end. And you can see at the end here on the paper too, you can see they kind of keep going, so I'll just add them in a little bit all the way over here. There we go. Then the next one is going to be adding a little bit more white to it. So now I'm going to take that lighter blue color that I have, and while it's still wet, I'm just going to do the same motion. And in this case, I want this boat to end here. So I'm going to say, okay, that's kind of where that boat ends. This one over here ends about there. Underneath, this one ends about there. So it's almost like I'm working backwards now, doing the ends of the boats and then bringing them into the front. And here we're just going to blend it together with some just streaks to show more boats. I might just finish it off with a little edge to just kind of say, okay, those are the edges still of the boat. Right now we've got a whole line of boats here. We can kind of see what's happening. Okay, now I feel like it's a little bit too light, so I'm going to go back, and this time we might actually even use a smaller brush, which I don't really have here at the moment, so I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm going to have to continue with the same brush, but if you have a smaller brush, this might be a good time to pull it out. And you're just going to line the top edges again, just to darken it up a bit where I went over it. Just to add a bit more definition to what's happening here, otherwise it's hard to see what's happening. And these front corners, they can be quite sharp as far as quite a bit of a 90-degree angle here. And then in this one I'm going to add a little bit, because this is my first boat. I'm going to add a little bit to the bottom there as well. Yeah. And I might even take just a wee bit in here. There we go, a little bit of a other color. This is a little bit of that purpley color, just adding a little bit more definition. And at the end we'll go into it with pure white, and that will give it a lot of definition. You can see on the picture as well, there's a couple of pure white streaks in there if you look at your screen. So I'm just going to add a pure white streak right here. Go up the boat there, a little bit of a white one over there, and just kind of say, okay, you know what, this is, as it moves away from us, it's becoming lighter. So these are the boats as they move away, and that's okay if they become a bit lighter there. A bit of light in that one, a little bit more. You can play with it a little bit back and forth if you would like. I think I'm pretty happy with the way that that's turned out. The only thing left to do is on this original picture, you can see in the front here, it kind of comes up and over. It does make it look a little awkward. It looks like a triangle. I'll put a little bit of that in. Not sure if I'm going to love it, so I might actually end up changing it out. So we'll see. I'll just put a wee bit of that in, saying, okay, that's the front edge of the boat, and then this is the bottom edge of the boat going across like that. I'll see. Might have to fix that later on. There. Yeah, I don't really know if I love that, but that's okay. All right, so that's the boats. Now, going to next work on the sky. You can see it's quite dark at the top. I'm just going to go through, and I'm going to start to darken up this whole area. I'm going to do it from here all the way up in this area, kind of in a bit of a, I think I'm going to make mine a little bit more of a triangle, so it's going to kind of cut off the top of the page. It's all going to be mostly blue in that area there. So get rid of some of that purple that I originally have there. It's okay, because it makes a nice base, so it'll work out just fine. So I'm going to start with my mid-tone blue, and I'm just going to put in some streaks here, give it a bit of a base. Paint is pretty wet at this point, and that's okay. I want it to be fairly wet because I want it to glide through and create a bit of a base here. Oh, paper keeps on falling down. All right. Okay, then you can let that dry for a few minutes, and when you come back to it, and take a bit of a drier brush and then streak out some of these darker colors again. So do the same thing that we did down here. We're just going to come through, with a few of the darker colors. I'm going to get really dark over here, especially the top. I want it to be quite dark. So I'm just going to come through a bit of the darker colors here, kind of say, okay, this is the darkest piece of the sky. And in this case, it's not a bad idea to let it dry a little bit in between while you do this. So you can again pull out your blow dryer and do it that way. I like it also when some of that lighter blue shows through, right? If we got a little bit of that lighter blue coming through, that's okay. Once you put the dark on top, it's hard to go back. So be careful about what you're doing, so you feel, so you do have the option of going back if you want to. And after everything is all dry, which is not in my case yet, then I'm going to go in with the light and just kind of soften some of these edges a bit, and add a little bit of, I'm almost using the white as a blender in this case, just adding a little bit of white to it to blend it all out. Maybe almost make it a wee bit gray. You got to be careful with white that it doesn't make it too gray. So taking that blue and adding that blue to that white. And sometimes it's nice for it to be a little bit chunky in a way and not completely blended. So if you like that look, then be careful that you don't do this too much, because otherwise it will start to, you'll lose a little bit of that chunkiness. I'll say the blue sky is coming down there, and then it's going back up in this area. You can see how well actually that dark blue covers up the orange that was underneath it, and that purpley blue as well. It covers it all up. So be careful, be mindful when you do this. If you want the little streaks to come out, like I kind of like the idea of a little bit of the light coming in here. You can almost see a wee bit of an orange streak in here, and I like this thing that's happening over here. I think it fits well for this painting. You can do what you think is best for your painting. Maybe I'll take it through and just put a wee bit of that blue in this area as well. It's kind of interesting. Mine is a little bit wavy. I'm not sure if that's such a great thing. So you might want to be careful that you're not waving your cloud-like structures as much as I did. I don't know if I love that waviness, but it's all just practice, so have fun with it. Right? And this is just so you can get the feel of the paintbrush and the different techniques and yeah, how things are moving and working and how paint works for you. Okay, you can see here that I have filled in some of the dark of the water as well. We've got our boats, we've got our different echoes of the sun coming down. Just got myself a little bit of a smaller brush, and I'm just going to smooth out some of the edges over here. If you come really close, you can see, let me see if I can do that for a minute. You come really close, you can see here that there's a little bit of white coming through in the paper, and I don't really want that to continue. So I'm going to take that out by just adding a little bit more light paint, blue paint with a bit of a finer brush, and just kind of smoothing it out a little bit so it's not quite so choppy. A little bit of that in here and over here. And just going back and forth with slightly different colors, a lighter and a darker. Smooth it in a bit. I like the type of painting that this has turned out to be. I like it to be choppy and see lots of different value, but I'm just going to blend it a little bit more so it's a bit more subtle as I go through. So I'm going to take a bit of time to do that, and then I'll show you the result when it is complete. Okay, so here you can kind of see I have the sky and the water kind of where I like it. Here's the original. It's kind of like that. I'm not loving the streaks down here, so I think I'm going to ignore those. I probably will not put too much light in the windows when I do this part, but you can do whatever you like with that. So there's mine. I'm going to start with the buildings now, and also with the masts of the sails. You can see I put them in a little bit. I'm just going to take a really fine brush and just brush those out a little bit better. And then from there, just finish off a few little finishing touches in the boats later on. So I'm going to do that, and I will be right back when that is done. Okay, so here is the end result. It's a little bit different than the original, but I'm okay with that. Let me just show you what the original looks like. So you can see the original, especially in the right hand side right over here, You can see it has a lot more. I've blended a lot more. They've got a lot more of the reflections coming down. I left this white. I think I might go back with a bit of pink and put some pink in there. I kind of like the idea of it being a little bit more pink yellow like that. So I'll probably do that, but for the rest it's pretty well there. So I used a small black brush over here and I just went in, I made a black blue. It wasn't a complete black, it was a little bit of a blacky blue. And I went in and I just did some silhouettes here of different buildings. I think this is kind of like a tree thing over here. And then I also built up the mass a little bit. I'm going to go back in this one and make it a little bit broader. Let me show you. I'm going to use a red black paint for that. And I think I'm just going to broaden it out a little bit at the bottom here because it feels like it should be bigger. And then I will take just a straight up black and put a little edge on it. Just gives it a bit of form. Just on the one edge, just a wee bit of a black line. Just adds a bit of a value to it. And I think I'll extend it a bit higher like that as well. There we go. So they go down like this in a bit of a thing, and the boats go across like this in a bit of a diagonal. And that's it. So final step for me is going to be taking off the tape. Oops, and yeah, look what I just did. So you want to be super careful that it's dry enough. We'll pretend that will be a happy accident, and we'll pretend that there is a cloud there that's just coming into the sky. I might take some blue paint actually and just fix it a little bit. Yeah, when you do tape off your paper like this, it is kind of nice because you get a really, you almost get like an edge on it that looks like a bit of a picture frame, and it allows you to make sure that you go right to the edge. I'm going to be a little bit more careful here with doing this. There we go. So I just have to glue that down for a minute. So that is the final painting. I hope you have a lot of fun. Looking forward to seeing your final results as well. Thank you. Have a great day.